Dave Mattson, CEO of Sandler Training. Best advice I ever got is be a doctor of sales.
Be a doctor of sales. Dave, what does that mean? When did you learn that? Who told you that?
Well, Dave Sandler actually taught it to me very early on because, I was so enthusiastic when I showed up and I had all this product knowledge. And when somebody would just give me a small little, interest or, hey, a small little problem, I just jump right on. And he said, Dave, that's malpractice. You're actually prescribing the solution long before you even know what the issue is. And if you think about doctors, they just ask a ton of questions. They don't sit there and say, look at this diploma, which in the sales world is, look how old my company is, look how great this is, look how great this is. He said you could really learn a lot from watching doctors. Good salespeople are doctors of sales.
Ooh, that's interesting. I'd never thought of that before, but that makes sense. I mean, we certainly think about the prescription piece and people
Right.
certainly the malpractice, but all
Yep.
the questioning and all of that curiosity. So did you come by that curiosity and that exuberance naturally, or did
No.
were you always a sales guy, or what happened, Dave?
Well, I'm introverted by nature. So I think if you were to put me up against the people that just go into a party and then can dominate the room, that's just not my thing. Now, can I do it? Yeah, but it just takes a lot more energy for me. And so asking questions and, not necessarily walking in with my ego on my shirt, that was easier for me. And so I was actually pretending somebody I wasn't. And then I met Sandler, and then it became very conversational for me. I could be who I wanted to be or who I naturally am. I'd have to overcompensate in certain areas, obviously, but it just helped me. And the last thing he told me is doctors never stop learning. They're always being accredited. And, I still do that to this day. I mean, I'm just a junkie when it comes to knowledge, knowledge, knowledge. And so all those little doctor things that if you think about good doctors, right? It's true. Salespeople, sometimes they become successful and then they stop. Like I've hit the top. Oh, okay. I don't want my doctor to do that to me, right? Hey, don't worry about it. I've been very successful for the last 10 years. I don't need to really get up into the newest technology. That would make me nervous, but yet that's what we do as salespeople. We kind of live on yesterday's successes sometimes.
Wow, that I have not. I mean, I've read that CEOs uh, do that, but I haven't talked to a lot of CEOs who actually do that. So, what's one thing or a couple things you've learned over maybe the last month or so that maybe you've put into practice, or maybe has disproved something that you thought you knew?
Over the last couple months, let's see. I found myself saying, we tried that, that doesn't work. And I realized, guess what? The world's completely different. And maybe we didn't try it the right way. Maybe it wasn't time. There's a lot of variables, but we already did that. It doesn't work here, was one thing that I've learned. And the other thing that I learned, which is way more painful for me, which was when I bring in really smart people to work here at Sandler. And I brought them in because I want to have them do something that I admired at their place of work, right? So I'm like, okay, instead of me pushing Sandler up, I need you to drag Sandler up, make it just like what you were doing over there, because that's awesome. I want Sandler to have that particular thing. And so we would hire the people, but I'd lose my intuition. I would suspend my own belief. For example, somebody would say, well, this is how it's done. Dun, dun, dun. And I say to myself, I wouldn't have never done it that way, actually. Matter of fact, I'm not even sure that works it's within our environment, but super smart. I brought them in for this. Suspend your disbelief, right? They have to be correct. And what I did is I turned a blind eye on two or three big things because I just said, oh, they must know. And I didn't put in what they knew with what I knew to make it a winning combination. I just said, they must know. And I turned my back, let's say, and I paid for it. I paid for it. And so that was an awesome lesson for me over the last 60 days.
Wow, that's a big lesson, and that's a lot of humility to even admit that that's something that you've done. So, hey, so with that, you talked about how you work for David Sandler. So,
Yeah.
who do you have other mentors like David that have helped you along the way? I mean, now that you're at the top of Sandler, I mean, who's pouring into you?
Well, I mean, I've got a lot of mentors, but if you think even about within our offices, you've got 250 offices, and with them, you've got some real rock stars. And so the other thing is when we have conferences, I make sure that I'm sitting up front, paying attention, learning like everyone else. Um, And does it take some control? Yeah, but in fairness, back to the doctor analogy, CEU credits, right? That's what it takes. And just because I run it doesn't mean I'm the best at everything. Maybe the best at nothing, quite frankly. That's why I had to buy it. I don't know. But in fairness, so I think that. But I listen to Zig. I listen to anything that I could get my hands on. I've got one of the people that works here was the president of Zig Ziglar for 20 years. And, I never really paid attention. But as I paid attention, I said, hey, that's really cool stuff. We talked about Robert Cialdini. I mean, there's just a lot of people out there that I think have their viewpoint on something. No one's got everything, right? Hey, we're all experts on everything. I'm the only, come to me, I'm the single source of truth. I don't buy that. But I'm always big into the psychology. I'm big into the head stuff because 99% of sales is communication anyways. And if you don't have it up here, like something's going on, we're in trouble, right? We're in trouble. I mean, even think about my parents tried to raise me to be a self-sufficient, good human. But in the meantime, they were telling me things that this really does not work in my sales world. Like, hey, don't talk to strangers. It's impolite to talk about money. Only speak when spoken to. I mean, you can just list them on. And by the way, I've destroyed my kids saying the same thing. And so they can grow up and just be with struggling salespeople. But what we were doing to protect ourselves was not the same message that you need to be a good salesperson. Because to be a good salesperson, if I worked for you, well, you would say, go talk to as many strangers as you can. Let's get budget on the table right away. We don't want to figure that, And by the way, ask good questions. Don't worry about if they are asking you, and have equal business stature. Respect your elders, of course, but go talk to that CEO. So we have to just kind of reprogram ourselves. And that's why it's always attracted me to that.
That's fantastic. Well, with that, right, congratulations on the book. You said 36 in the Sandler organization, How to Sell to the Modern Buyer, 52 Sandler rules for sales success. Great stuff. Very, very well done. So let's talk about that budget piece, because a lot of salespeople struggle with that. And when, if that's the first thing anybody asks, do we give it to them, or is that misdiagnosis?
Well, I mean, listen, everyone wants to know what the number is, right? Especially in today's, everyone's a Google doctor. So they think they already know their issue already. So when it comes to money, I always acknowledge it. Say, look, I'd be happy to talk about budget. Matter of fact, we should be talking about budget before the end of this meeting. I just don't know enough yet. So if we don't mind, let me ask you a couple more questions, and then I can get enough information where I can give you at least a picture of what that budget may be. But sitting here right now, I can't.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. That's what I would advise too. And it's I think inexperienced sales reps think it's one or the other, like either run away from it or they just blurt it. And it's like, I don't think either one is exactly the right answer. Right. We want to get some more information, be more curious, and give a real answer.
Well, it's like that back to the doctor, right? Hey, do I need an operation? I don't know yet. Maybe. Let's ask a couple questions. Let's figure this out. And then we'll talk about, a plan of action before we leave. It's the same type of thing. But, the subtleties for salespeople is, hey, what's the budget? I'm glad you brought that up. Want to talk about it? I've already acknowledged, right? So I'm not automatically pushing away, because when I pull away from those questions, prospects, they want an answer. So they're going to come at you again, and then they're going to think that I'm just kind of dodging the question. So I've acknowledged it. I've said I'm going to do it, but let me hear the 2 or 3 things I need in order to help you get that information. So it works much better.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Good example there, and good diagnosis, if you will, of the misdiagnosis of giving it up too quick. So with that, lots that we could talk about in the book. I want to talk about the sales triangle for our sales reps here that are listening in, because I think it's super important. And these make sense when we talk about them, but often we don't teach them. So there's behaviors, attitudes, and techniques.
Right.
Certainly we start almost always new salespeople. We have to teach you the techniques, how to open a call, how to do discovery, how to ask questions, right? All of that. So I don't know that we need to spend too much time on that, but let's talk about the other two, Dave. Which one, attitude or behavior, is more important, or are they equal?
Well, listen, I mean, that most people say, well, attitude drives everything, but I would say that behavior drives everything. You start behaving, you'll start thinking differently. Even think about running. I don't wake up saying, oh my goodness gracious, it's raining or it's cold. I can't wait to get out there. I hate running. But if I'm starting to run after a while, I'd be like, okay, this is not so bad. Get to the end of the driveway. Okay. Then pretty soon I'm into it. It's, you get into it. But I think sometimes people talk themselves into something and then we do nothing. So to me, look, everyone's a technique hound, right? We all want the good things to say. It's true. And we're good at it. But what keeps those things working, so you don't go to a workshop, you don't see something, let's say, and then you go right back to what you were doing 30 days later. What sustains that? Well, it's mindset, right? It's how you think about stuff. I could give you a cold call script. You still won't make them. So how do I deal with call reluctance? How do I deal with fear of rejection? How do I deal with the fact of like, I'm afraid to talk to that CEO? That's all the mindset head stuff, right? So that's there. Behavior, the other side is, what do I have to do every single day in order to be successful? You reverse engineer your funnel, because most people will say, okay, I need a $10 million quota. I need 50 clients. In order to get 50 clients, I need 200, presentations. And then they stop. But the problem is you can only control your behavior. I can't control who's going to see me, who's not going to see me, who says yes, who's not going to say yes. So if you go down another 10 layers, I know that I have to talk to X amount of net new clients a day and X amount of referrals a day. I got to do this, I got to do that. And I do a little bit of everything. So I have a well-rounded business, not just, schmooze my existing customers and no net news. So I have a well-rounded business and it's not painful. Because if I had to do, let's say, 100 outbound calls in a week, and Monday went by, I didn't do anything, Tuesday went by, well, next thing you know, my Wednesday is miserable because now I'm just pounding all these in. But if I just do a little bit each day, it's not so bad. And I think there's a lot of stuff that goes on with the behaviors and the attitudes, which will allow you to use the techniques in a consistent manner.
Yeah. Okay, so you talked about call reluctance, and that's one that we hear from folks often. Either either they hide behind email or they don't even reach out. So how do we help that mindset? How do we help build that muscle up stronger so that we get through some of that call reluctance?
Well, there's a couple things. I mean, and I'm going to give you a bunch of different things in a small little comeback. The thing about call reluctance is there's a difference between who you as a person, and who you are as a role. And people get very confused on that. So when I go and get rejected, I take it personally. I must be no good at sales. Oh, it must be me. Blah, blah, blah. Well, maybe not. But as a role, as a salesperson, I didn't do the right job. I missed the mark. And so I can deal with that. But when I get sucked in emotionally, it must be me personally, right? That's when salespeople start to crumble, because let's face it, salespeople, if we're going to be prospecting, we're going to make 100 calls and have minimal success, right? I don't care what modality you're using. And so if you think about it, it's like putting your hand in a meat grinder. Love it, love it, love it, love it. No one loves it, right? So I think the other thing is you should look for no's, don't look for yeses. If you're looking for yeses, meaning how you're going to keep score, right? So I'm going to go until I hear 50 no's. It's better than until like 50 yeses. If you hit 50 yeses, your grandchildren will still be waiting for those things, right? It's going to take a time. So if I say 50 no's, like, oh, okay, number 5. No, number 6. Okay. So I turn my negative into the positive. The other thing is, hey, look, make those scripts yours, right? Don't pick somebody else's script. I can't read other people's, speeches. If it's not you, it oozes out, right? You have to be sincere, right? You have to be credible. You have to have confidence, and you're going to do that, and you should practice. So for me, I practiced those scripts many, many times until it became me, and then I dropped it, right? And then I became agile. And I think that's the other thing. You just have to kind of go with the flow, have a little fun. It's okay to smile when you're making cold calls. Not, hello, this is David Mattson, I'm here to call you, please. No, I mean, it's hard. So, and the other thing is I like to do it, get it over with, quite frankly. I hear people say, well, I put all my prospecting towards the end of the day. Now, if that makes sense by your persona, that's awesome. But otherwise, you know what you're doing? You're kicking the can. It's going to screw up your whole day. And all you're going to do is find something to do at the end of the day and not do it. I mean, let's just be honest about what's happening here. And so those are just some quick tips.
I like that. Yeah, the procrastination of cold calling doesn't make it any easier. It just makes it a bigger beast at the end of the day, unless you're pointing.
Yeah, well, it's like sales. It's like sales managers, putting off that uncomfortable talk, whatever the conversation is. And, listen, I've done it myself, and it's not as important. Maybe I'll do that tomorrow. Well, you can't have that conversation on a Monday. Let's have that on a Tuesday. And the next thing you know, it's becoming this massive thing where if I just had courage for 5 minutes at a time, life would be good. And it's never as bad as I fantasized. It's never as bad as I fantasized.
Yeah, and it does only take a little bit of courage to make that happen and start the ball there. And you talk about preparation, right? Preparation
Yeah,
is important for our sales leaders as well, I
sure.
think. So how do I'm going to have that awful conversation with that person that I know has call reluctance. How do I best prepare for that? And then how do I have that conversation, Dave?
Well, I mean, regardless if it's call reluctance or not, right? I think the first thing about if I was going to have an uncomfortable conversation with an employee, let's say, is one, I want to just kind of outline what am I going to say. I don't want to wing it, right? Because if you resist, you deny, you defend as the person I'm talking to, I'm going to get boxed into a corner to prove I'm right. And next thing you know, stuff comes out of my mouth that probably should have never come out of my mouth, right? So to me, I think you need to figure out where do you want that conversation to go? What are the main points that you'd like to bring in? And then start thinking about how are you going to say them? So it's not a personal attack. It's on the role side, right? You're going to ask for feedback. Hey, listen, my feeling is this, and it's always a feeling. It's not an accusation, right? So my feeling on this is blah, blah, blah. How do you see that? Versus, I'm telling you 150 times, you don't pick up that phone call 5 times, you're done, right? So I think you're going to have to do it a little differently. Now, if you're at that point, that's fine, but that's called critical parent. You will, you should, you won't. When you do that, people resist. But if I put the issue on the table in a non-emotional way and having all the relevant facts and saying, how do you think we should deal with that? Because here's the other thing. I think people can deal with their own issues and they'll have more ownership if they co-create that solution versus you as a manager saying, from a dictatorial perspective, this is what you're doing. Now, you may have to get there, but chances are that person shouldn't be working for you anyways, right? I mean, in fairness. And so those are just some quick little tips. But, I think the other thing is after a tough conversation, why don't you follow up the next day? Hey, I was thinking about you yesterday. I was just following up. Any other thoughts that you've had since we've chatted? Hey, did you get an opportunity to try that? That's awesome. Those types of things. You
Wow.
got to put them together, right? Put them back together after the difficult conversation. And most of the times they know it's coming anyways. I mean, if you're a good manager, you shouldn't be shocked.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if you're a good manager, there's no surprises.
No,
If you're a poor manager, you're probably both surprised at this conversation because you didn't notice that it was coming, and neither did they. And that's
that's right.
a problem. Somebody else told you got to have this, right?
Well, that's
So
it. Yeah, there's your first clue, right? Ding,
yeah,
ding, ding. Yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Well, you talked about that parent relationship, and I actually love how you kind of begin your book here when you talk about how sales is a conversation to uncover the truth.
Hmm.
That's different than what I've heard before. So explain that. Talk to us about how that is, because when I read it the first time, I was like, okay, that's interesting. But as I got through the book, I'm like, that makes so much sense.
Well, listen, first of all, sales is a conversation, right? You, as a salesperson, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Use them in proportion they were given to you. So if you find yourself just blowing and going on a sales call, we're in trouble, right? So that's like a doctor, again, telling you everything there is to know about whatever, but they never really asked you, where does it hurt? Why are you here, right? And that's important. I think the other thing that we've got to do is to make sure that when you tell people they have issues, they tend to deny them. If they tell you, it tends to be true. So people never argue with their own data. My goal is to get you to verbalize what the issue is. Now, if you can't get there, I'm going to tell you through a third-party story, so it's not big weight on your shoulders. Or I'll come back and just say, based on the 25 years of experience, here's the way I see that. And you find sometimes that the truth doesn't mean you're getting an order. It's okay to find out in a conversation that there's no valid next steps that you're going to do. I think sales managers give everyone credits for moving stuff through the funnel, which is the reason why their funnel is full of garbage, instead of saying, hey, you get as many points in my mind to disqualify prospects as you do pushing people through the funnel. And once people know that that's true and you honestly do follow up with that, it's awesome, because think about all the wasted resources that we have in the company. When you're on the support side, they're always arguing, they're always not arguing, but just frustrated by they're being brought in too late to the deal. It's already been shaped. They can't do anything, or they're brought in so early because the salesperson has no idea what they're doing, that when you do really need them, they're not available. So I just think that it is finding truth. It is asking questions. Never take the first thing that they say, at face value. So somebody says, hey, out of curiosity, do you have a budget set aside for that? Oh, absolutely. All right. Well, would you mind saying now? I absolutely check the box. No, not so much. I'm going to go by and come back and say, well, that's awesome. Like in round numbers, what would that be based on what we've talked about thus far? Because you know how things work internally much better than I do. And boom. So we have to reverse. We've got to do 2 or 3 questions to find out, because people talk in generalities. We do. If you really think about it, clarity is something that we all strive for, but none of us get. So you just have to start paying attention, and don't look for all the positives and check the boxes without going down 2 or 3 layers.
Yeah, you talk about happy years in the book, and that's something that I always remind the reps that I'm training. Like, stay away from the happy years. Like, listen for truth. Don't listen just for what you want to hear. And that's
Right.
that's a big one that newer sales reps make, or ones that frankly, that they just want a full pipeline without really putting any truth in their pipeline. Is that what you're finding as well?
Oh, yeah, of course. Listen, I think the best thing that a sales manager could do, and sales reps, and it's not in the book, but honestly, it's really good advice, is to create exit criteria. So if you have a 5-step sales process that you follow, and process is different than methodology, right? So whatever it is for your company, these are the 5 steps that we follow. You should never have, let's say, a prospect pull you through your sales process when you don't have enough information. The way that you can really clean up your funnel is to say, before we move to gate 2, we need to know these 3 things in gate 1. Before we go to gate 3, here are the 3 or 4 things we absolutely must know. And salespeople will resist in the beginning because they're like, well, you can't find out all of that stuff. And maybe that's true, but then it's an exception to the rule, not the rule. And if you would manage your exit criteria, what you find is you're forced to ask all the good questions you should have anyways, because you can't progress. No resources are going to be available to you until you progress, and you get much better at asking those questions. Sales managers are shocked at the hygiene. It's perfect in that funnel, because you're actually not allowing people to move. And when they can't, either you have to make an exception as a sales leader saying, okay, or what you really find is they were never buying anyways. You just kicked them out of your funnel much faster. And because the only commodity that I have as a salesperson, my most precious commodity, is time. It's time. And I want to make sure that I can focus my time on the most, I guess, opportunistic, or the most, the buyers that have the issues that I can solve, and the highest probability that we're going to work together. That's how boil it down. That's really where we are.
Yeah, focusing on those vital few instead of on the trivial many absolutely helps all the time. So that's great advice. Well, let's pull a chapter from the book here, a little segment here. 52 great ways. So I'm just going to randomly pick this up, pick up a spot here, and let's say, rule 12 here. You have to learn to fail to win. And the key takeaway in this one is winning is the result of failing. So what does this one mean, Dave? How can we put this into play for maybe our attitude or maybe behaviors so that we can learn to fail to win?
Yeah, so this one no one likes, but it is true. If you think about sales, as we said, we lose more than we win, right? And that's true in every phase of the sales process. So what this is basically saying is, hey, let's acknowledge it. We're going to lose. All right. So, and by the way, not you personally, it's your role, right? The IR thing that I talked about. But the bigger thing is, let's find out those lessons so we don't repeat it, right? And now we're always focused on win, win, win. We don't debrief. Like, how many of us really debrief calls that we lost as a team? All right, team. Why did we lose that deal? Well, we priced it too high. Okay, outside of that, what happens, right? Because that'll always be the first one. I didn't get your support manager. You didn't lower your price. All right, but once you start doing that, then you can start to tightening your process and getting better and getting better and getting better and tweaking and tweaking. Some of the things that I've learned over time happened by accident because we figured out, why are we losing right here? Because you can also see patterns, right? It means sales is a science. If you treat it as such and just get out of the ego part of it, which is, oh, it's me. I can, I'm the master magician. I can move people through the funnel and all that other stuff. But I think if you do figure out where you failed and what you can do to minimize it next time around, then you increase your success rate. And I think managers really have to get that in their head, because most salespeople are afraid to tell you that they failed, afraid to tell you they had a loss. And that's why, we spend half of our time trying to be, almost like a mind reader, right? So they said this, that salesperson, I have to really give them a 50% wash on whatever they told me over here. He's a little more accurate. I'll give him a 15%. I just think if we can just put it on the table, it's much, much easier.
Yeah, intellectual honesty with ourselves and with each other, I think, is a great way to live in the sales land. Absolutely.
But that culture doesn't exist that many times, though, does it? I mean, we say it at a meeting because we check the box, but how many managers really live that? It's not enough.
Yeah. So let's dig on that just a smidge here. As a sales leader, like how do we get better at living that when we're not sure how much we trust our team?
Well, well, first of all, that's hard, right? So you're going to have to look in the mirror as a sales manager to find out, okay, where's the real issue? Do I actually have sales process? Am I actually coaching, or am I calling up saying, how's it going? Or can I help you? All right, well, that's a wasted time. That's a waste of time, right? So look at yourself. But I think the other thing that we can do as sales leaders, just to get that mentality going, right, is to think about, I like better, different. So for instance, when I'm talking to a rep and they say, hey, so I get it, but what did you do well? Like, what went well? Blah, 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 blah. Great. Okay, what could you have done better? And what should we have done differently? And when you have them kind of talk you, their self-discovery happens. And I can see patterns as a manager because I'm not emotionally involved in the process, right? So it's almost like, hey, managers, we should celebrate the things that we do well. We're always focused on what went wrong. What can I help you with? Where's this? Okay, I'm going to help you here. You'll get better. But most of us forget that if somebody's doing something well, you should say, that's awesome. You're awesome at that. Keep doing it because it matters. We're so focused on all the things that we have to change as reps because that's what managers keep telling us what to change. But reinforce the things that are doing well. Because if you don't, then I'm not even sure I'm doing that right. And I might throw that, out and not continue that particular technique when in fact it was a winner. I just didn't know it. So, I think we have to be dedicated as sales leaders and have our own behavioral plan of what we are doing to grow people each and every week. And it's just not one-sided. It could be, hey, I'm going to listen to a call. Hey, we're going to do role plays. Like my team role plays twice a week. And when there's new things going on in the marketplace, well, I heard this today. All right, how are we dealing with that? And it doesn't mean we have to mimic the role play, but when your reps have confidence and conviction, that's awesome because we as salespeople know way more about our product and service than most buyers. I'm not saying that's true everywhere, but most buyers. So, it's our job to make sure that we've asked all those good questions, to do all those things so we can bring that type of solution to them. So we just got it's a well-rounded machine for sales leaders.
Yeah. Well, I like that. Those 3 points there. What are we doing well? What could I do better? And what can I do different? I think are powerful questions and good reminders to reinforce the good and that it isn't poorly, it's different or it's a little better. And I think that's really, really strong. So Dave, 52 insights. We talked about one. What's one that maybe you came across that you're like, oh, wow, I really dig this one, or people really need this one to sell to the modern buyer?
Well, I think, listen, I'll give you an old tested one, which is stop selling features and benefits, right? We just talked about how you know your product better than the client or a customer. That part is true. But I think we spend so much time on product knowledge and we get so geared up. And when I hear you say one slight indication that you could use my product or service, boom! Really, it's like buzzard on roadkill. Like I'm all over you, right? But here's the problem. Salespeople have false confidence because I'm confident in my product knowledge. I'm not confident necessarily in asking you business questions and listening and trying and not knowing where the conversation's going and have the pressure. Can I connect the dots? All that stuff, but if you do sell features and benefits, all you're doing, quite frankly, is I think you're minimizing yourself and minimizing equal business stature, because how are they going to determine whether they're going to do business with you or somebody else? It has to judge based on price if it's only features and benefits, right? If you really do think about it, because most people show up and say, we're great, we're great, we're great. No one shows up and says, hey, we're really struggling on service. Hey, this is happening. And I think if you ask people top 3 reasons why I should buy from you, they're going to give stuff like, well, service, reputation, my product's great. If they get fired from that company and go down the road, and I ask them if they have a new shirt on, so now I don't have my Sandler shirt on, I got some other shirt on because I'm working somewhere else, top 3 reasons why I should buy from you. They're going to say the same thing. Well, it's service, it's our reputation, it's our product. And the client doesn't know. I think you have to go look for, and Sandler used this term way back in the 70s. It's become very popular now, which is pain. Look for the pain. What are they trying to address? And if you're in the book, you see the pain funnel, which are those questions. Those are doctor questions, right? So if somebody says, look, I'm having a real issue with my current service, with my partner, with my vendor. Okay, well, how long's that been an issue? All right, well, give me a specific, like, give me an example, right? And, well, what have you done to fix that? So if you really think about the doctor questions, if you were going in with a back pain, right? Well, how did it happen? How long is it? Give me an example of when it hurts, where it hurts, right? What have you done to try to fix it? How come it didn't work? They ask you the same types of questions going back to that opening comment. So look for need, look for pain, use your product knowledge, the features and benefits to formulate good questions that will uncover, do they actually need that particular feature or benefit? Don't lead with it. Lead with a question that'll uncover if they actually need it.
Excellent, excellent. So last question here before we send them over to Sandler.com to get a copy of the book, which is fantastic, by the way. Again, congrats on that. So you talked about business questions and you talked about learning. So Dave, how do we encourage our reps to focus more on the business impact, and where can they learn more about the business so that they can do that? I mean, because that's not often taught, right? I do a lot of sales training, and I know I'm not teaching business type stuff, right? I'm not saying, okay, well, read The Economist or anything, though I probably should. So what do you think? I mean, how do you help your folks understand the business so that they can have those equal conversations with the CEO?
Well, first of all, I would actually take a different approach. I think if you start off with a good 30-second commercial, which has the top 3 issues that you typically see when dealing with that person, that persona across the table. We haven't worked together in the past, but I work with CEOs like yourself who are probably experiencing issues around 1, 2, 3, and tell a little story. I want them to insert myself into that story, right? So that's there. But I also don't believe you need a PhD in their business, because if somebody says, hey, I have a problem in service, right? I don't have to know their business inside and out. But when I ask the questions, I would say things like, well, let's I guess put into perspective. I mean, how big of an issue is this? What's the ripple effect? I mean, are we losing customers? Are people upset internally? Is it just that you're upset? What's the business case for this, right? Because, I don't know if we can fix it or not, but certainly we don't want to go down this road if it's not something that's important to you. And then let them tell you. They're going to tell you things that are issues about the business, issues that affect them. Everyone keeps coming to me, right? So listen, I can't do my job. I need this taken care of so I can do my job. So they get off my back. Well, where did that show up? Versus, well, we can get this, we're the best in service of all time, and I do all that pitch. So I think you just ask the question, have them co-create that. You will get better and better at that. And again, listen, once you start selling into an industry, would you be able to pull things off to the side? Yes, you can. But the internet these days gives you so many opportunities to kind of go, what's happening in XYZ industry, what's going on here. But honestly, I work with so many different types of clients. I don't have a PhD in what they're telling me. I listen, I react, and I ask if it's a big deal. And then I validate, is it really a big deal? I had somebody come into me and say, this problem is a $25 million problem. I said, is that a lot for your company? Actually, it's not. I was inside saying, wow, we got this one, you know? But at Microsoft, they didn't seem to care. So it's like, well, it's not really that big of a deal. I said, well, let's put that one off to the side. What would be a big deal? And then we are off to something else. So think about it in those terms.
Yeah, relative big deal is different for everybody, and making sure that I love your point about validation. That is often missed, right? 25 million, big deal for me, maybe not for someone else. So I think that's
Right.
awesome. That is awesome. So Dave, again, congratulations on the
Thank
book,
you.
How to Sell to the Modern Buyer. Folks can pick that up at store.sandler.com along with all the rest of the books. And Dave, is there one social network that you spend any time on that folks have questions, they want to interact with you at all?
I'm always on LinkedIn. They're welcome to come to LinkedIn anytime. And I always answer those every single day. And, if any listener wants to just pop in one of our programs, they be my guest. Just say that, we listen to the podcast and, big fan, and happy to have them as my guest.
Awesome. That's great. Well, Dave, again, congratulations. The book is How to Sell to the Modern Buyer, 52 Sandler Rules for Sales Success. This is Dave Mattson. Lots of great stuff, friends. Remember, think about well, better, and different. What's your rep doing well? What are you doing well? What can be done better? And what can you do differently next time? That's all for now. Thanks so much. And